Welcome to Championship Sports Blog. I'm your host, Chandler Ward. Today we have a special guest, former WWE superstar, TNA and ECW superstar, Al Snow. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for giving me the time. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir, of course. We're going to get right into it here. First question I got for you is what made you want to become a professional wrestler, Al?
I've been asked that question several times, and I've never really been able to conjugate a really good answer.
Hmm.
Um, I decided I wanted to be a professional wrestler when I was 14, and I made that decision that I was going to do it, and that was it. I never looked back.
Yes, sir. And how did you end up getting your start into professional wrestling?
Well, it was a different time. I started in the early 80s, 1981. Started training. At that time, there was not a proliferation of training schools or guys that were very open or willing to train people at that time because everybody was kind of held accountable for who they brought into the business. And, you took a risk. Sometimes if you brought somebody in and they did something, made a mistake, and it hurt business in some fashion, well, a lot of times the guys that brought guys in, young guys in, were punished for that. So they didn't want to take the risk. And I got a hold of a journeyman wrestler by the name of Jim Lancaster that was going kind of into semi-retirement, was going looking to run his own outlaw independent shows, and he wanted a crew of guys that he knew he could rely on, and so he agreed to train me. That's the short
Wow.
version. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's incredible. And you would end up training with Ole Anderson and Gene Anderson, correct?
No, that was not training. That was a tryout that I went down and paid for, and they basically, they
Okay.
just blew you up, exhausted you, put you really tortured you, and then beat the beat the crap out of you and sent you home. Was basically what it was
Wow.
for. So, and they
Wow.
they
Wow,
made
that's
about
incredible.
$250 a person. So they had about 30 guys there that day, and 30, 40 guys. And, I think one guy had made it through. And then years later, I was in Smoky Mountain with Sandy Scott, who had worked in the office for Crockett at the time. And he had said he had remembered a guy that we had talked about the story, and had remembered Ole and Gene Ole bringing a guy into the local YMCA because, again, there were not, training schools. They just would take you in and take you on the mats at the local Y judo mats or wrestling mats, and teach you, how to work a wrestling match. And I guess he only lasted about 2 or 3 days, and then never showed
Oh
back up
man.
again. They had beat him up enough to where he was like, this ain't for me.
Wow. Yeah. How was working with Jim Cornette and Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Oh, it's great. Jimmy, I've known Jimmy since probably 84, I think, probably 85, somewhere in
Yeah.
there. And yeah, Jimmy's always been fantastic. And, you know, Jimmy's Jimmy. I love him dearly. You gotta, you're not going to change him at this point in time. Jimmy's going to be Jimmy, and, you know,
Hmm.
do Jimmy things and have Jimmy opinions, and that's fine. I mean, it's not like he doesn't have a background or some kind of knowledge about what it is that he's
Right.
talking about. So you've got to respect that, and, appreciate that, he may have a different viewpoint, than what the average person does.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's got experience over, years and years in the wrestling business. I mean, his opinions aren't coming from nowhere for sure.
Sure.
So with the WWF, how did you get started with the WWF?
I was in Smoky Mountain at the time, um, and was funny. All within the same week, I got contacted by WCW. They wanted me to come down and do a dark match, and then I was the same week contacted about by WWF, and
Wow.
the two experiences were as different as night and day. Just really incredibly different. So,
Hmm.
and I made the decision to sign with WWF at that time, and went forward from there.
Is there anything specific that was different between the two companies at the time?
Dramatically. Uh, I was contacted at that time. It was Jeremy Borash contacted me
Oh wow.
in regard, and he was not in the wrestling business, to my knowledge, at the time. He was more of a fan out of
Hmm.
Detroit, I think. I'm not real sure. And I really only had conversations with him. I never really had conversations with anybody directly in the company. And then, I got a plane ticket. I was asked to come down for a dark match at the um, um, center stage TV tapings. Um, I arrived in Atlanta, took the uh, shuttle or whatever it's called over to CNN Towers.
Hmm.
Sat around for hours, never heard from anybody until probably around 5, 6 o'clock. I reached out and spoke to Janie Angle, who was in the office, um, because apparently they wanted me at center stage, but I didn't know where it was, didn't know how I was getting there, no ground transportation, no nothing.
Hmm.
And luckily, Scott Demore at the time was working with WCW, and I caught a ride with him over to center stage. Got there, never spoke really to anybody until late in that day when David Penzer came in and asked me to sign a release, and then because I asked to read it first, got upset with me, and then which I then signed, uh, and then I sat for more hours until the end of the TV taping, had a dark match, and had a brief conversation with Eric Bischoff, who said he would contact me after a pay per view they were going to have in South Dakota. Um, I never heard from Eric. I told him at that time that I was going up the following week to WWF. He said, "Well, you owe it to your family to go talk to them too as well, but I'll get back to you." And I said, "Okay." Got went to WWF, landed in LaGuardia. There was a limo driver there at the bottom of the escalator with my name with a sign, and took
Mm.
me put me in a car, drove me out to Connecticut to Titan Towers. I met JJ Dillon, and at the time Lisa Wolf gave me a full tour of the TV studio, gave me a full tour of Titan Towers, sat with Vince for 2 hours and talked. He offered me a contract right then and there. I said, "Well, I've spoken to WCW and Eric Bischoff, because you owe it to yourself. You take this with you, and let us know." I said, "Okay, I will be glad to do so." I waited for 2 weeks,
Hmm.
spoke to Jerry Morborash a couple of more times, never heard from Eric, and then decided, well, I'll go with Vince, and that was it.
Wow. And that was in 1995, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
would have been in summer of '95, I believe. Yeah.
And you mentioned Scott Demore there. What is your relationship like with him, and what was it like working with him?
Well, as far as I know, it's terrific. I would, I haven't spoken to him in a while, but Scott and I have been good friends for years, and my old partner Mickey Doyle kind of
Hmm.
was instrumental in kind of getting Scott, up and running and in the business, kind of mentoring him, and like kind of like what he did with me. And I uh, when I had my training school and stuff, I would run shows in Ohio, and I used Scott and crew of his guys, and I worked on Scott shows up in Windsor, and so we had in that whole Ohio, Michigan, Ontario region. we were pretty familiar with each other.
Hmm. Wow. And you mentioned Ohio there. You're working with Ohio Valley Wrestling. What is your role with Ohio Valley Wrestling at the moment?
I am chief creative officer for OVW. So,
Wow, that's awesome. And what led to your decision to purchasing the company years back?
well, I joke that I had my life was kind of unexciting, so I decided to rip myself. But the the real reason is that like I had no intentions of doing that. That was not what I was planning on doing. But at the time, I kind of gotten a little, still I am, I guess, very frustrated with the fact that the wrestling business has no real standards for training or for someone to be able to train someone.
Hmm.
Um, and it really still, I guess, is I find it to be an insult that, I was speaking to my wife who operates her own uh, licensed massage therapist business. And, it occurred to me that in all 50 states in the union, uh, if you want to be a licensed profession, barber, mortician, beautician, etc., I can go on down the list.
Right.
Then you have to attend a state accredited school. You have been approved by the state that governs these licensed professions. You have to be taught by a state approved and accredited teacher. You have to complete a certain number of state required hours of training, and then you have to have a certain amount of uh, supervised or hands-on experience, supervised hands-on experience residency before you can even take a test to get a license in that particular profession. And and then you have to have continuing education to maintain it. So, there's a lot of standards as far as that. And let's face it, the likelihood of an injury being suffered by either the person performing the task or a person who's having the task performed on them, whether it be, a beautician or a barber or a massage therapist or, etc., is minimal. In wrestling, okay, every time a young man or a young woman steps in the ring, there is a percentage of a chance that they can suffer a life altering or life ending injury. It's just a fact. That's
Hmm.
not, take aside the whole BS about whether it's real or fake. Everything in the ring is quite physically real. It's simply the intent behind it that's not. So there is that chance of an injury, of a severe injury. And the only way you mitigate those percentages is by being properly trained. And there's nobody that does that, period.
Hmm.
There's no standardized approach, and at the time, I had appealed to the commission in Maryland, the commission in Louisiana, Oklahoma, because what really motivated me was a young man out in Oklahoma that year had died, poorly trained, uh, working with somebody on a show. And, and Oklahoma is a very strict, uh, governed as far as commissions, state,
Hmm.
but clearly not that much because the guy had suffered a head injury and off a very simple move and had, apparently was in a coma, from what I understand, for quite a while until the father had to pull the plug, and
Hmm.
so I was appalled. I just was like, this is ridiculous. So I
That's
started
terrible.
appealing to the commissions who all just kind of shut me down. And I went to the commission here in Kentucky. I went to the executive board meeting and made the appeal there face to face. And again, it was shut down. But at the time, I had met my business partner at that time. His name was Chad Miller, serial entrepreneur. very successful, was the executive director of the Boxing Wrestling Commission at that time, and was very instrumental in getting WWE to come back to the state of Kentucky and operate events again. And we joined forces. Danny Davis at the time was flirting with the idea of retiring and was kind of like, hey, would you be interested? And I was like, I don't think so. And then one thing led to
Hmm.
another, and voila, I ribbed myself. So
Wow, that's an incredible story, and it's really awesome that you are trying to put those standards back into professional wrestling. Um, Another question I got for you is, what was it like working in ECW with Paul Heyman?
I mean, it was a great experience. It was both times. The first time prior to going to Smoky Mountain, and then
Hmm.
the second time when I tried to depart WWE at the time, and they kind of put me on loan there. So I always enjoyed it, and it was an amazing experience and was a great opportunity. Anytime, going anywhere, there's never a negative really, because you have an opportunity to do what you love to do. And
Hmm.
that's, everybody's like, well, how was it working in this company? Great. It was
Right.
fantastic. Were there frustrations? Absolutely. Were there creative differences? Of course. But
Hmm.
was it awesome? Yeah. You know why it was awesome? Because I got to do what I love to do for a living. That's why. Now, I've worked in far more companies than just ECW or TNA or WWE,
Of
but
course.
unfortunately, that's the only ones anyone knows anymore these days. I've worked in just about every company that had a W with two other letters to it, but
Yeah.
they were all the same. You know, they were
Hmm.
all, you know, you you sit in the back and you listen to everybody bitch and complain and piss and moan and try
Hmm.
to compete with each other the whole time. And then you get to go and have a blast doing the one thing you love to do for 10 or 15 minutes, and then spend the rest of the day, the next day, listening to everybody bitch, miss, and moan, and complain, and travel, and then go do it again. So,
Yeah, and when you were in ECW, you were still under contract with WWF, correct?
yeah, because I had a bad attitude because of my own ignorance and stupidity, and not identifying the opportunities that were right there in my face.
Hmm.
And that was my fault. I take 100% responsibility. I tried to quit. And they rolled my contract over for another year.
Hmm.
And then, thanks to my friendship with Candido, Chris Candido, who was kind of in tight with Paul at the time, and Paul, you know, and Chris went to Paul, and Paul, from what I understand, went to Bruce, and you know, Bruce Pritchard was in charge of talent relations at the time, and they put me on loan there, which allowed me with the intent. I went there explicitly with the intent to reinvent myself and make myself a value.
And you would end up wrestling Shane Douglas for the ECW World Title at WrestlePalooza in 1998. What are your
Yeah,
memories of that match?
I just, again, that whole time frame was just an amazing adventure and just a blast to be a part of, and
Hmm.
and to get the honor of getting to headline a show like that and a pay per view.
Hmm.
Paul was taking a big risk as far as one, doing a live event outside of his actual regional territory in Georgia.
Hmm.
As to whether or not it would be successful as far as live attendance. That's a big risk. And
Right.
then, in addition, now just kind of entering the pay per view space at that time, that again was a big risk as well. And
Hmm.
to be trusted with that was a big compliment.
And another question I got for you is, how did you come up with the head gimmick?
again, my intent was to go to ECW to reinvent myself,
Mm-hmm.
to truly get over and make myself a viable attraction and commodity, um, to where Paul would pay to keep me, or Vince would pay to bring me back, or Eric would pay to steal me away. And
Mm-hmm.
I took the assumption that the people that knew me as Leaf Cassidy from the exposure with WWF, anybody that was that happy and up all the time had to be a little manic and a little crazy. And
Yeah.
then I knew that there were fans in ECW that knew me as Al Snow. So I figured anybody that had been doing what I've been doing, because I'd been at it for probably 12, 13 years at that time.
Right.
So, anybody had been doing something that long and was getting frustrated that, they'd have a nervous breakdown. And so I started trying to show that I had had a nervous breakdown, and found Styrofoam Head that I started was going to talk to, and it worked. And the reason it worked is for one reason and one reason alone, and that is because the audience could believe in me. They could believe in what I was doing and who I was and what I was saying. And I tell guys all the time, the most valuable thing you can ever develop. It's Wrestling's not about wrestling moves. It's not about athleticism, which is good and is great. And I spent
Mm-hmm.
years developing that as well. But every single time in my career where I was truly successful was the times when I had an identifiable, describable, believable persona that people could connect with. And you know, still to this day that I've was taught how to catch wrestle, and I know more switches, reversals, takedowns, escapes. There's not a. I used to stand on the edge of the ring apron back in Smoky Mountain, and the ropes were at least 5.5 feet tall, and I could spring up from
Mm-hmm.
the center of the ring apron, twist in the air, land on the top rope, and moonsault in onto my feet.
Wow.
It didn't make people buy a ticket to see me, but
Yeah.
I could pull the head over up in the air like this and shake it, and people
Mm-hmm.
would buy a ticket or would tune in to see what I would do or what I would say, and that made the difference, made all the difference, you know. So it's I try to tell young talent all the time that it's they all endeavor so desperately to sell what they do these days, and nobody's
Mm-hmm.
going to buy a ticket to believe in that. But they should be focusing more on selling who they are and why they're doing it, the intent, which is the only thing that's fake, and then the consequence of it, and those are the only things that are fake about wrestling. And
Mm-hmm.
those are the three things that an audience wants to believe. And the only reason people buy a ticket is so they can believe, so they can believe and forget about their everyday lives and just get caught up or swept up in the emotions of the competition between two guys or two girls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've heard you say before, like the greatest wrestlers are ones you can describe in one sentence,
Yeah,
and I think there's something to that for sure. And
yeah,
the head gimmick was a genius idea, and you could definitely describe your character in a sentence in that time period.
sure.
You mentioned the character Leaf Cassidy.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like working with Marty Jannetty as the new Rockers?
I was very blessed, very lucky to get the opportunity to work with Marty, and people don't appreciate and they don't respect, and yeah, that's probably partly Marty's fault for his behavior, but you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, regardless, that does not change the fact that Marty was everybody was, well, I want to be the Marty Jannetty of the team. Brother, you can't be the Marty Jannetty of the team because you're not that good.
Right.
I hate to break it to you because
Yeah.
Marty was very talented and really knew and understood a lot of things, and he's the guy that kind of helped bring along and break in Sean and teach
Mm-hmm.
Sean as well. Marty just was his own worst enemy and was not very adept at, the political maneuverings backstage as much as Sean was. And Sean,
Mm-hmm.
was very good at that, and that helped him as well in his career. And that look, I'm not saying that as a disparagement of Sean,
For sure.
because you have to be as adept at maneuvering backstage as you do an audience outside in the ring. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're not uh, as good at the backstage stuff, well, a lot of times you're not going to get those opportunities, no matter how good you are in the ring.
And in 2002, we would see Tough Enough, the very first season. What was it like working on Tough Enough and training some of the up and coming guys in the WWE?
It was awesome. I mean, it was probably one of the things I absolutely enjoyed the most in my career, and probably one of the things uh, that I'm most proud of. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we would we had nobody directing us. The first season, then of course it was successful, so now everybody wanted to jump on board, and nobody wanted
Right.
anything to do with it at first. But then, oh, that's successful. Oh, let me get a part of this too.
Yeah.
Of course, But it was awesome because I was still a part of the wrestling business and contributing to it in a different fashion, but and which has kind of led to what I think my real legacy in the business is all the different people that I've helped or taught and had them go on to become some kind of positive, have some positive impact in the business to some degree or another.
Mm-hmm. Do you think working on Tough Enough led you to want to be a part of OVW and years later?
Well, I think that's what led to that opportunity that, Jim Ross knew what I could do. He was one of the ones that recommended to Kevin Dunn that I be a part of it. Originally,
Mm-hmm.
that was more of a vehicle for Taz than me. And it just kind of became one for me, uh, just through circumstance,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I, treasure that time. It was an incredible time for me, and I really really enjoyed it. And then that led to the initial opportunity when WWE had the developmental program with OVW
Mm-hmm.
for me to come down here and to operate as a consultant, head trainer, and then Jimmy shortly thereafter got released, and they brought in Paul, and then they started ECW and took Paul away and brought him back up, and
Mm-hmm.
they Greg Gagne, and then through Greg, I just kind of started writing and booking and putting the show, directing the shows. Um, and then after Greg got let go, then I just took over and had done it, and
Mm-hmm.
then kind of utilized it as a part and parcel of the training and the development of the talent at the same time.
And another question about Tough Enough I got for you is what was your reaction to the Bob Holly and Matt Capitelli incident?
Well, it was an unfortunate situation. You know, uh, uh, it really should never have occurred.
Mm-hmm.
Things got out of hand. There was, a lot of, how can I explain this? When the formula for the television producers, because all they care about is good TV, that's
Right.
all they want. And so, they would always pair me with like initially Taz, because Taz would just show up and he'd be the blender. And of course, the more you create controversy or the louder you are, the more now you're hoping that television's going to be centered on you.
Mm-hmm.
And And wrestlers, their objective when they get in front of a camera is to get themselves over. So that combined with producers that are now trying to stir the pot, and also a lot of jealousy. And I mean, really a lot of petty jealousy within the locker rooms of the main roster. Guys are, these guys ain't paying their dues, and you know, they're going to pay the dues. Everyone does in some way, some manner, fashion. Everyone, you don't get away, you don't get something for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just a way to knock these kids because they got blessed and got lucky and are, got a way to come in like this. And, you're resenting them because you didn't have that opportunity. And it's not like if you had had that opportunity, you would have went, you know what? No, I don't want to come in on a nationally, internationally broadcast reality show that will make me, whether I go to WWE or not, will make me a star or an attraction within the business I want to be in. Now, I'd rather do it the hard way, and I'd rather go wrestle for nothing in front of nobody for years and suffer physical injuries and no real reward until maybe I just happen to get a break. Nobody in the right mind
Mm-hmm.
is going to choose to do that. So why are you angry or resenting these kids? And so, that played a part in it too. And then now you've got the guys that come in that are, remember, are going to try to do what they can to get themselves over on TV, but they're also now trying to get themselves over in the locker room. So
Mm-hmm.
now it becomes a competition. Who can be the bigger, who can be the bigger bully, who can be the bigger prick. So now you had Taz,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, big prick, even though he's a great guy. Now Bob's a
Right.
great guy, but on TV, ooh, got to be a prick.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got Bill DeMott's on season 3. Well, now Bill's there. Now there's a little bit of a back and forth between Bill and Bob, and then it got out of hand and went too
Mm-hmm.
far and was completely unnecessary. It was a
Mm.
violation of trust. So you know, and Bob's a great guy. He's a good person. It just he got swept up in the moment, I think, and
Yeah.
and again the BS in the locker room and the BS from the television producers and the BS from now who's going to be the biggest badass guy that's going to give these kids a hard time, make them pay their dues between the three of them on the three
Right.
seasons. Who's going to come out the one on the end? So
Yeah, that's got to be a tough
stupid,
position
just
to be
dumb.
in, having to, try and get yourself over, and then you got the pressure of, people in the back
It's not really
watching.
if you just be genuine and be who you are, you're going to get over. You
Hmm.
know what I mean?
Right.
And that's the thing. But sometimes guys they get desperate and they just here's my chance. Let me go in there and make an impression, and sometimes it's not a good one. So
Hmm.
it's just it was an unfortunate event that obviously left a mark that still people bring up to this day.
Right. And another question I had about Tough Enough. Who do you think is the best wrestler that has come out of the Tough Enough program?
Oh, they were all really good, but just in
Hmm.
different manner. There were everyone had their strengths and had their weaknesses, and you know, and you had to evaluate them on that and what were the best odds that someone could capitalize on that opportunity as quickly as possible and get some kind of return on the investment for the promotion that would prevent the promotion from then being disappointed or sour on the expectations and then cutting that opportunity short.
And we've seen like a resurgence almost of Maven from Tough Enough with his YouTube channel. Do you have any memories of how that came about when you guys started tag teaming on TV?
The natural, like I was his mentor from Tough Enough, and I was there to kind of fill in the blanks and to kind of float him along, to
Hmm.
experience wise, and it was a great time and a great opportunity and a great experience. Maven's he's a great human being. He's a really wonderful person. He's very intelligent, very charismatic, great personality. So it's no shock at all that he's enjoying the success that he's having, at this very moment, doing his own, YouTube stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It just, a matter of, situational circumstances that cut his career short with WWE. And, uh, if he were slightly younger, who knows? But creating the audience that he now has could parlay into another opportunity for him in WWE in some manner down the
Absolutely.
road. It would not surprise me one bit.
Mm-hmm. And another tag team you were in a tag team with one Steve Blackman. Is it true that you guys were supposed to win the tag team championships at one point?
From what I understand, yes. And then there was some conversations, and then that got taken away. But
Mm,
yeah, that would have been the second time I'd, had a run with the title. Mick and I had it
right,
for a week and, just went to the New Age Outlaws, but we had it. So, and there
right.
was definitely some serious talk from what I understand, I was never made privy to any of that. But then I was
Mm-hmm.
also, told the rumor is that there was one voice that was dissenting and pushed for it to not
Mm.
be us and put with somebody they had more of a personal interest in.
Do you have any ideas on who that might have been, or
Oh yeah, but it don't matter now, so who cares?
yeah?
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah, in 1999, you were tag team champions with Mick. You got any memories working with him back then?
yeah. I mean, we Mick and I always had a chemistry, both in and out of the ring. For whatever reason, it just clicked, and people found us and our relationship, to be entertaining, and it worked really well. Um, it just, it went to where it was going to go, and that was it.
And then you would also become the hardcore champion. What was it like whenever they do you have any ideas of what it was like when they would plan that kind of stuff out? Because there would be like
Oh God, no.
multiple champions in one night and things of that nature.
Well, there were at the time when I was hardcore champion, there were not
And then
multiple champions
another
at
question I
one
got
night.
for you is I'm sorry.
I said when I was the hardcore champion, it was not 24/7, and it was not multiple champions in one night. That started
Right.
much further past that point.
After.
Yeah, and I
Hmm.
I don't I don't really have much insight in regards to what went into those decisions because quite honestly,
Hmm.
like uh, I would for the entire time I was with WWE, I would show up at a building and people would come up to me and go, "Well, you're doing this tonight," and then that would be it.
Right.
No direction, no here's what we're hoping to do. I can name off so many different times, and then I bear some of that responsibility because I didn't at the time I didn't ask questions, which I probably really should have to try to get a little more in depth and into what they wanted and why they were doing it and what direction they were going and what they were hoping to achieve. But people would walk up and go, "Oh, you're going to do X, Y, Z," and then just walk away. Nobody called me. Nobody called me during the week. Nobody explained to me any plans or outlooks or what direction they were going.
Hmm.
Uh, that those conversations never took place. It was, I would, even when I was doing Tough Enough at one point, they reached out while I was in LA doing Tough Enough and wanted me to come to Atlanta for the whatever pay per view was going on, so I could work with Christian for the Intercontinental title in the opening match.
Mm.
I'm like, okay, but no, hey, here's what we're doing. Here's what we want to do. Here's what we're hoping. Nothing. No conversations. No discussion. No direction. No insight. You know, uh, quite honestly, was the only time I think I had any of that was the one conversation I had with Vince Russo in regards to the from hell angle, and then
With Boss Man.
and only had one conversation in regards to that, and then one with Brian Gewirtz in regards to you know the European title run, and that was
Mm-hmm.
just a vague overview type of thing as well. So that it was not like anybody came and, hey, we're gonna do X. We'd like to do blah blah blah. What do you think? That didn't happen. It was, they just walk up and go, so you're over, or in you've got 8 or 10 minutes, or so and so's over, or you know, that was it. No, there was not a lot of insight or direction or ideas of what it is they were hoping to accomplish or where they were wanting to go. It was just, and
Mm-hmm.
that, to be honest, that was a lot of my experience in the wrestling business until I got to WWF. I'd never encountered producers or agents of segments. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it was it was the booker who came and told you, gave you a little bit of information and a length of time that you were to go, and then that was it. And so I just assumed that was how it was done until it was years later that I realized, hey, wait a minute, I probably could have done a whole lot better and could have delivered more of what they were wanting if they just told me the expectations of what they wanted out of it before I went out there to do it.
Right.
Crazy,
Fair enough.
I know, but
Yeah. And in 2014, we had where in my hometown we had a TNA house show. It was in Batesville, Arkansas, and I actually got to see you there and take a picture with you there. What was it like working with TNA and back then backstage?
oh, it was great. Again, nothing negative. How can it be negative? You're doing what you love to do. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting the opportunity. I think at that time I was a producer. I know at one point with TNA I was a vice president of television and talent relations for about a year and a half or something. But then got moved back to being a producer, and that was
Mm-hmm.
fine with me. I hated that job, but too much. You think the politics in the locker room are bad? You should try the politics in the office.
Oh
Um,
man, I couldn't imagine.
Horrible. So you know, um, but it was. I was always so impressed with TNA because TNA was, nobody really gave it its due, and
Mm-hmm.
in regards to you've got WWE, WWE's WWE, it's a monster. And I don't mean
Right.
just now, I mean even back then. And you had three generations of experience, three generations of connections, three generations of, relationships business wise. You had three generations from, Vince's grandfather to Vince's father to Vince. You had three
Mm-hmm.
generations that had built a reputation, had built a standing, had built, business and personal relationships, had built and had experience in all kinds of situations and, what to do, and, and resources, not just financially, but, you know, based on all of that experience and those relationships, had all these resources. So,
Mm-hmm.
it really helps when hey, you're going into a town and you happen to be buddies with, a lot of the people that pull the strings and can make things happen. It smooths the way a lot more. So for TNA to be able to produce the television show that it produced on the level that it produced at the time with a third of the staff, a third of the office personnel, a third of the production staff, a third of the production resources, a third of the roster, a third of, I can keep going and everybody worked
Yeah.
so hard there to really make what they had as good as they could possibly make it. and to be on a national network and stand toe to toe, and be at least in the same conversation with WWE was pretty
Mm-hmm.
remarkable that TNA was able to pull that off for as long as they did, considering the fact that they did not have those three generations of resources or financial backing or experience, etc. They didn't, connections to buildings, so on. That TNA was to be able to hold its own for that length of time was pretty remarkable.
Absolutely, and there's still going strong at the moment. And a segment we did last week, and we're gonna do right now. We're in a room full of action figures in here. We got a big action figure collection, and
Mm-hmm.
we have two Al Snow action figures right here. We've got
Awesome.
the Bone Cruncher,
Right.
and we also got this Titantron Live draft style Al Snow. And
Yeah.
was gonna ask you if you kept any of your action figures of your own, or
Mm-hmm.
did you ever purchase them?
Yeah, I've kept them all.
Awesome.
I've got one of each one of them that I've always kept. There were a couple companies, Epic Toys over in the UK just did an updated one, and then Hastel Toys has as well with the new rockers. They put out a set,
Mm-hmm.
and um, and they're putting out a new Al Snow, and yeah, I definitely will always keep at least one or two of those for me, and it's it's awesome. It's so incredible to get that and have that happen. It's a little piece of immortality. So no matter what,
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, when my career is completely said and done, and you know, I'll still have those little pieces that exist,
Mm-hmm.
and people remember. So yeah, I love it. I think that's it's awesome. Plus, I get to play with myself all the time. So
Do you have a favorite action figure that they made of you?
not really. I mean, well, probably the one that got banned from Walmart, and
Yes.
all of that one resulted in a ton of publicity. It resulted in
Mm-hmm.
about a week and a half that I was a national news event, and they even did a huge, center of the magazine article in
Mm-hmm.
Time magazine on the whole thing. So, you know,
Wow.
I've had some pretty amazing moments that have happened in my career that I'm always eternally
Mm-hmm.
grateful for. So,
Absolutely. Working as a producer and a trainer, do you ever see yourself returning to a company like TNA or WWE or even AEW to help train or produce anything?
sure. I mean, I'm always open to opportunities and, expanding and getting more experience and, always open to helping someone realize their vision for their company or for their talent or for
Mm-hmm.
a particular talent to you know and I try to explain to people I don't teach based on what I know. I teach based on where I've made my mistakes, and now through that experience allow others to benefit from it so they don't make the same mistakes themselves, you
Mm-hmm.
know so um, yeah, I'm always open to it. I enjoy very much what I'm doing right now, and
Absolutely.
really, really rewarding and happy to do it. Very grateful to do it, even though all I
Mm-hmm.
do is complain about it. But yeah, I still am actually very, very grateful for it. And uh, but yeah, if an opportunity were to come along, and it was the right opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
um, it would be something that I would enjoy. If it were something I would also enjoy, that would be fun. Then I would certainly do it. If it weren't fun, if I didn't enjoy it, it wouldn't matter. I wouldn't be interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they have this new show out now in the WWE. It's called LFG. If they ever contacted you about joining that, do you think you would have fun doing something like that, similar to Tough
Oh,
Enough?
sure, yeah. I think it would. Yeah, it's similar to Tough Enough. Would enjoy that,
Hmm.
but I don't think they will. I don't. I can't see that happening.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair. And we're getting a little bit close to time here. Is there any plugs you want to put in the video, and so people can see
sure.
your content or follow your content?
Yep, they can go to ovwrestling.com. We're live. We're outside of WWE and AEW. We're live every single Thursday night from 7 p.m. Eastern to 9 p.m. Eastern. We're on YouTube. We're on Triller. We're on Facebook. Um, we're live locally on our broadcast partner, and then we're not live, but we're across the country in multiple national networks between Canada, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Bahamas. We reach about 100 million plus homes via broadcast, cable, and streaming networks. So you can check out ovwrestling.com if you're interested in wanting to be a wrestler. You can go to ovwacademy.com. Check that out. We're the only certified as by the state office of proprietary education as an actual trade school for professional wrestling and sports entertainment and broadcasting in the world. No one else has that designation.
Mm.
And if you're interested in following me on social media, you can follow me at the Real Al Snow on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it. It's the Real Al Snow because prior to the little blue check marks, there would be some people and still do fake being me. And look, if you fake being me, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to message you and go, why not aim the bar higher? Seriously. I mean, if you so, if you're going to fake
That's
being a
fair enough.
celebrity, try Brad Pitt, George Clooney, something cool. You know what I mean? Not me.
Yeah. Well, the last question I got for you is, are you still active in the ring?
Uh, Occasionally, yes. They still trot my old ass out every once in a while, and you know, we'll
Hmm.
here comes the wrestling bear, and I'll come out and do something every once in a while. So I still enjoy it, but I'm not yet at a place where I feel like I'm a complete or total embarrassment. And when
Hmm.
that point in time comes, then I won't ever do it again. So
Right. Yeah, you seem to still be in excellent shape from what I've seen on social media. So,
well,
uh,
I'm even better in the dark. I mean, the darker it gets, the better I look. So
yeah. Well, thanks Al for coming on so much. You can follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, like he said, and make sure to check out Ohio Valley Wrestling. They've produced some of the greatest wrestlers in the business today. And
yeah,
also make sure to like, subscribe, and follow Championship Sports Blog. And you'll see this interview and many others to come soon, hopefully. Would love to have Al on again at some point.
sure.
Thanks very much, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate you giving me the time.
You're very welcome.